Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. It is John Pollock and Wai Ting who is here with us as we are embarking on yet another edition of Rewind-A-Dynamite. So welcome all that are joining us live at youtube.com/postwrestling, where we are live every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday, almost every day. How are you today, Wai? He is speechless. That is what Wai is. He is just in shock at how Dynamite ended tonight, just days after Wardlow was crowned TNT champion.
Really?
Boy, that finish.
All right, there we go. I'm really sorry, John. Sorry, my computer's decided to crap out on me, and I know that my camera is a little funky right now. So why don't we try this, and then I'll try this, and there we go. All right. Would you like to start that again?
We just want to make sure everything is doing well with you. How is your day?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, John. Not bad. Got to see you briefly.
That's right. I got to not only see Wai today, but I got to see the star of the Ting family. I got to finally meet Oscar face to face, and boy, was he impressed to see me today. He looked at me, he's like, okay, you're this guy I've heard of, and very calm baby Wai, I have to say, like just chilling in the back seat. Guy could have, he seems very calm in my 3 minutes of interaction. I'm sure he's like that around the clock. Never a peep out of him, I'm sure.
I will say I feel like for now, we are actually enjoying a really calm period. Like he's not talking yet, he's not walking yet, so I know I expect that to change, but at the moment he just kind of gives the same look to almost everybody. So, yeah.
How do you like my area? Is it just a nightmare for parking?
It gets kind of tough. Yeah. So, it's going to get worse. They're like building condos all around you, and you don't have much of a pathway for your cars to get out. So,
yeah, I'm thinking of moving to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Quebec, Canada. Did you catch that line?
No, I did not. They said that? Really?
Apparently that is how they teed up next week's show, apparently. So I'm looking for real estate there. If anyone can direct me. Winnipeg, Manitoba, Quebec, Canada.
There are a lot of places.
The forgotten province.
Quebec's really big, so if there's a Winnipeg, Manitoba within there, then yeah.
For all those years, we were worried about separating from Quebec. In fact, they were just looking to join with an existing province and just come together.
They've absorbed various provinces and particular cities. Yeah,
it's like let's latch on to Manitoba and then get rid of the rest of Canada. We don't need the rest of them; they'd be fine. Quebetoba.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm guessing they don't teach much Canadian geography in American schools.
It's fine. It's cold up here. That's all you need to know. Keanu Reeves. That's it. We have plenty to get to on today's show. One of these days, I'm going to start the show and say we've got very little coming up on the next show. We're going to talk about Dynamite, but that's about it. There's not a whole lot going on. I do want to make mention, because I will forget this off the top, is we have a new edition of Ask Away, our monthly mailbag show that is up. And I thought that this was a good one. I thought that we went into a lot of different topics. We do give plenty of time per question, don't we, Wai?
Yeah, we do. Apologies for the camera again. I don't know what's happening here, but yeah, this was like a bit of a lighter mailbag, so I didn't even know it. We don't read the questions ahead of time. Like I think we only had like 10 questions. Usually we have considerably more, but like 10. When I saw that, I was like, oh, this is going to be a short show. We ended up going like 90 minutes, as like we went the same amount of time. We just stretched, like we just got to spend more time answering all the questions. We got to dive pretty deep, and thankfully they were 10 really good questions. So I kind of like the format. I almost don't want to encourage people to leave any more questions and just let us, focus on a few instead. But of course you can. Yes.
Well, everyone is welcome to submit questions over the next weeks before we do our next one. We're also going to open it up now to voice memos because it is free to submit your voice memos, and we will take questions that way as well at memo.fm/postwrestling. We're going to be utilizing the voice memos a bit more in some of our shows, but in particular, it makes a lot of sense for Ask Away. So whether you are a patron or not, you can still submit your question, and they'll be included for next month's show as well, and you can also post them up on the forum thread. We have also, Wai and I have been hard at work putting our heads together for our WrestleMania week coverage. And we're not going to go over everything yet, but we are planning quite a bit that week. So our WrestleMania week, it will be chock full of questions, I hope, but also answers that we will have for you in the coming weeks. But lots of shows coming out that week. I expect us to be having shows out pretty much on a daily basis, covering as much as we can that week as dozens of shows are taking place in and around Los Angeles.
Yeah, we're not traveling there this year, but I think that gives us an advantage in being able to watch a lot and to be able to cherry pick from show to show. These, if you go to John's schedule right now at postwrestling.com/mania, you'll get a full list, and there's a lot that's going on. So we'll do our best to watch and keep everybody up to date on what the most, talked about shows are, what the most talked about matches are. And it'll be a pretty busy few days for all of us.
Yes, we are going to have plenty of reports up on the site, plenty of shows, a lot which will be up there for Post Wrestling Cafe members. So if you are looking for an entry point, that will be a week full of shows. And of course, we will be live those nights, Saturday and Sunday, live and free for everyone here on the YouTube channel after each night of WrestleMania. So that's all coming up in the weeks to come. But we have a bunch of interesting news to discuss off the bat. WWE has announced that they are going to be going to Puerto Rico for Backlash on May the 6th, which was the date that Brandon Thurston had reported recently. So they will be holding the event in San Juan. This will be the first pay-per-view/premium live event in Puerto Rico since New Year's Revolution in January of 2005, when Triple H won the Elimination Chamber match, if you remember. Well, this time it will be hosted by Bad Bunny. They're running in an arena that has a listed capacity of just over 18,000. I'm sure it will be scaled a bit lower than that for the setup and such, but this seems like an event that is going to get a ton of publicity because of Bad Bunny and being in Puerto Rico as well. An area that they do run live events there and have consistently gone there, once or twice a year, but obviously never, or at least not at the scale of a pay-per-view since 2005.
Yeah, I imagine this will sell out pretty fast, with just that level of pent-up demand. I find it really interesting how they're having several, coastal North American, between this, of course, Saudi Arabia and also Money in the Bank, several.
There will not be a PLE in the continental U.S. from WrestleMania until SummerSlam.
Yeah, I find that really fascinating. And clearly, a new strategy as part of a new regime. And I don't know why it wasn't attempted before. I mean, there's obviously Saudi is a completely different story, but as far as bringing these big scale events to a place like Puerto Rico or to a place like the UK, there is such pent up demand in all of those places,
and
so much
and where
money
there is pent up demand. I mean, that was a part that was brought up, the idea of looking at more site fees for some of these larger events. You have to wonder, is that playing a role in any of these shows that they're going to areas and they're being incentivized to do so? Like we saw with Clash at the Castle, that was the reasoning for it. And with the O2 Arena, I mean, they are not just that, but SmackDown the night before that they are running live in England and therefore will be on tape delay here in the US. So it's something to look at. Some of these events that Nick Khan had outlined was something they were aggressively looking towards.
Yeah, and they just happen to, have a very close association with one of the top recording artists in the entire world, who is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, cultural representative of the entire country. Or and I apologize if I'm getting some of the terminology wrong. Is Puerto Rico
is part of the U.S.? Yes.
Okay, so it's wrong to call it a country.
Yes.
Okay, so apologies, everybody, but nonetheless, Bad Bunny is associated with it, and that takes it from just simply maybe being a Puerto Rican event to an event that everybody around the world would be interested in. So I'm happy for everybody that gets to see a live event, that hasn't.
Yeah, do you think that he would perform at this show, or do you feel like he is so in demand as a performer that he would be I
think he'll be involved in a spot or two.
Yeah, that's like, you want me to perform? That's an extra payday. That's its own stadium event.
He'll do a few Canadian destroyers, but maybe a song. I mean, he could do everything. I mean, what does hosting technically mean?
It means using him on the show however they deem that they wanted to, and maybe if they ever allowed legalized gambling of pro wrestling in Puerto Rico, they would have to figure out Bad Bunny's involvement on that show now and lock that result in today through Ernst & Young. So that's going to take us to our next story, which came out from Alex Sherman, who reports on WWE a decent amount when it comes to their media rights and such with CNBC. And I'm just going to read a bit from his report that he put out on late Wednesday, that WWE is in talks with state gambling regulators in Colorado and Michigan to legalize betting on high-profile matches, according to people familiar with the matter. WWE is working with the account firm EY, not Eric Young, to secure scripted match results in hopes that it will convince regulators there's no chance of results leaking to the public, said the people, who asked not to be named because the discussions are private. I love this idea of we're going to have these results under lock and key that will not get out, as this very sensitive negotiations is being leaked to a reporter. But nonetheless,
yeah.
EY, also known as Ernst & Young, have historically worked with award shows, including the Academy Awards and the Emmys, to keep results a secret. I'm going to just skip down here. This is just about the Academy Awards and kind of the parallel they're trying to make WWE is. A WWE spokesman declined to comment. A spokesperson for EY couldn't immediately be reached for comment. According to a Michigan gaming spokesperson, the Michigan Gaming Control Board publishes a sports wagering catalog. When updates to the catalog are approved, the information is shared publicly through the agency's website. Okay, same here with Colorado. If WWE succeeds in its bid to legalize gambling on matches, it could open the door for legalized betting on other guarded, secret, scripted events, such as future character deaths in TV series. Allowing gambling on certain WWE matches would alter how matches are produced and how storylines are created. In discussions about how gambling on wrestling could work, WWE executives have proposed that scripted results of matches be locked in months ahead of time, according to people familiar with the matter. The wrestlers themselves wouldn't know whether they were winning or losing until shortly before a match takes place, said the people. For example, the WWE could lock the results of WrestleMania's main event months ahead of time based on a scripted storyline that hinged to the winner of January's Royal Rumble. Betting on the match could then take place between the end of the Royal Rumble and up to days or even hours before WrestleMania, when the wrestlers and others in the show's production would learn the results. What could go wrong? The introduction of legalized gambling could give WWE an increased appeal to a new set of fans while significantly altering creative storylines. Paul Levesque took over as head of creative operations from Vince McMahon last July. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of this. Again, they are in talks, it seems, with two states regarding this. And I know a lot of people are going to bring up the DraftKings agreement that WWE and AEW, for that matter, have. And I am not an expert on DraftKings, do not use it. But DraftKings, from my understanding, it's sort of like, yes, it's gambling. But my understanding is that it's also somewhat points-based that they get around. It's not matches that you can bet on. It's all a series of prop bets that is somewhat different than just outright winners and losers. But this would be like, this is just, jumping on what many sports leagues are with legalized sports gambling. And where does professional wrestling fall when these are controllable outcomes? And and how that could obviously be manipulated. Obviously, betting on professional wrestling exists, but we're talking about offshore betting outfits, or not in the legalized sense with some of these like gaming control boards in different states. But the fact that it is this detailed in this report tells me that this is more than just kicking the tires on this. They would be willing to radically alter how they produce pro wrestling, which to me almost gets away from what this industry is. And first of all, Wade, just some of your overall thoughts. And do you do a lot of red flags come up for you here? And do you see this as something even viable, as this is certainly in line with WWE's ability to what are we currently doing that can make us more revenue? And sports gambling is a natural that they would fall under, but this is not UFC, and that's a whole nother bag of fish or bag of worms, because we've seen just the problems they have had when it comes to gambling.
Yeah. My immediate reaction to any discussion of professional wrestling and gambling, at least, maybe outside your circle of friends, and in some sort of like, legitimate setting, is concern. Just knowing how professional wrestling is put together, and how, I guess, most of the time, like, results are relatively predictable, and I suppose that would be reflected in the betting odds. But I just have a lot of concern, because anytime you have people that can dictate the direct result of the thing that you are betting on, there's bound to be corruption. The idea that they could fix, like, they could set a result in stone and not touch it and keep it locked under this, these sort of accounting firms, is really fascinating to me. But one that completely changes, like, my impression of how professional wrestling is done. I just,
it would eliminate, like, it's funny because on the one hand, if you are just strictly of the Vince McMahon style of professional wrestling, all these decades where the notorious stories of stuff being ripped up the day of, finishes to major matches, like the Undertaker, his streak ending and learning the day of, like, these ideas that, man, if you had something like this that would handcuff you to long-term plans, great. But on the other hand, it's like it completely negates any chance of imagine locking in Elimination Chamber in November, and and you're suspended from a character catching fire and trying to ride any momentum. And
or like, various other reasons why you might want to change a result on the fly. Let's say you get word that somebody is injured. Yeah, exactly. And they only have enough to, like the Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins Hell in a Cell match, for instance. What if Seth was supposed to go over for that one? And I suppose you in wrestling, you could have had Seth win and, Cody just go away. I suppose that would have been okay. It just, maybe it's not impossible, John. It certainly hasn't been attempted yet. And maybe it's actually possible. I'm kind of open to seeing how it could be done, because it seems like they're very serious about this.
They are, but it to me would be something that it just, like, it's interesting, because I was actually listening to a show today just about the, like, betting on the Academy Awards, and the thing is, it's like you have this, this group of voters, and it still is, like, it's such a small amount of people that would even have access to something like that. Whereas this, it is like, would this make a writing team redundant? Like, how many people would need to know your results several months out? And then you're plotting the television, and your performers are not going to know the direction of where you're going. And then it's just, and this industry especially, it's just, listen, there are loose lips in every industry, and professional wrestling is certainly not apart from that. It's like finding out, like, plans in advance. I don't want to say it's like super easy, but it's like you come across it fairly, like, it's like word spreads, and I don't know if that would really change all that much here. And it's just, I look at the James Krause situation in MMA and just look at what they just went through, that whole saga. And to me, professional wrestling is just so much more rife for that kind of thing. Say nothing of the fact of talent that would, if you are a lower end talent and there's an ability to monetize information that you will have to be privy to at some point in all of this. It's just, to me, there's a lot that would come with this that I just don't know if the revenue that WWE would be able to generate from this would be worth the potential hassles. And
they clearly think it is if they're going this far, with entertaining the idea. Like it tells me that they are willing to completely shift the way that they are, or at least slightly adjust, in a major way, the way that they plan these professional wrestling outcomes. There must either be that much money to be made, or they are that confident that they can tell long-term stories and stick to their plans.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch. I would certainly question like how realistic this would be, and ultimately these state gaming commissions from wanting to get into this. But the argument is going to be, if you can bet on things like the Academy Awards, if you can bet on non-sports, then professional
reality shows,
all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess this to me is one that this can be manipulated a lot more than, say, who's going to win Best Picture. It's like it's not like somebody can just change the votes to reflect the odds to make a killing off of. Like it's still talent that could easily go against something in the ring. Like ultimately they're the ones who have to play these things out on camera. It's just, to me, a lot of red flags that come up with this, but certainly an interesting story when this popped up, and did not surprise me, though, that WWE would be looking at this, because I think they look at giant revenue-making opportunities. Sports wagering is a huge market that we have seen them dance around with the DraftKings sponsorship, and the fact that it is something that is out there that already exists. There are people wagering money on professional wrestling matches that WWE does not get any cut of when it's these offshore accounts and such.
I want to go to a super chat a bit earlier here. Pete from Texas sends $5. Thank you so much, Pete. He just wanted to clarify that DraftKings has two sites, one legal, one in legal states where you can bet on single games. The original is point-based like fantasy football. He also says it sounds horrible. I'm referring to professional wrestling being a part of it all. Yeah, so there you go.
All right, we're going to continue on with some of the other stories that are going on here. So on NXT Tuesday night, it was a very interesting show. They shot a bunch of angles setting up Stand and Deliver. The big one being a segment with the Grayson Waller effect involving Shawn Michaels. And I thought Grayson Waller was tremendous in this segment. He is a very special talent. I think he could be a big player.
And obviously they think so. They put Shawn Michaels in there with him. Yeah.
Oh, I thought Waller was he just came off as such a star in this segment, and he has for a long time, but I thought this was a really big segment for him, and he was outstanding. Like, he has become one of the best talkers in the company. He is quickly emerging as a big star, and I mean, they did tease the idea of Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement, and they were really hinting at that. But then Shawn revealed that, every year they back up a Brinks truck to get me to come out of retirement. But unless you've got that Saudi Arabia Brinks truck, Shawn does not have a price.
Yeah, that was not mentioned in this segment.
No, he's like, for the last decade, he did state for me to wrestle at WrestleMania. But yes, October of 2018 does not exist.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe they'll do a NXT Stand and Deliver in the future in Saudi Arabia. They'll bring NXT there. You think so?
Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I know the idea was to, basically like set up Grayson Waller versus somebody, and then Shawn naming Johnny Gargano as his surrogate. But I was still surprised that they even tease that direction, because I think well, in the CWC you weren't really risking anything. That's one of the more obedient audiences you could have, but nonetheless, people watching at home, I think a lot of people will be like wanting to see Shawn Michaels come back, and like, could they have done it without no sort of reason, like, or at least just to set up this Johnny Gargano thing? Could they have done it because they might entertain the idea of Shawn coming back?
I mean, it was certainly teased here. I really believe like Shawn physically is not going to do a match at this point. I think Saudi Arabia was his confirmation that this was what were his words as soon as that match was over? We're too old for this. I mean, I think that
the match was bad, and Hunter tore his pec, but Sean, I don't think looked that bad himself. You know what I mean? I find it strange that they would even go that far to tease a one-on-one match.
Remember all those years ago when he did the Bryan Danielson angle, and that was so set up that it felt like he had to be coming out of retirement. Like Danielson's there putting him in the yes lock, and even Danielson was thinking like he must be coming out of retirement, but he was not. And they've dangled it every so often. I would say if he was ever going to do a match, it probably would not be on an NXT special unless he was just adamant about helping out this NXT brand. And even then, I think they would. I really do not see it happening. But he was one I didn't really see coming back either for that Saudi Arabia show, and he did it. So you can never completely dismiss it. Maybe him and Muto together.
Maybe. What would you call that team?
I'd need some time.
Interesting. Yeah, Johnny Gargano versus Grayson Waller. So this will probably be Johnny Gargano's WrestleMania, and this year, like maybe the best Johnny Gargano could probably
first time this guy has felt like a star since he returned in Toronto.
Yeah. Even with that new remix of that song. Who wins?
Grayson Waller should win, but he can also lose the match, and I don't think it's going to hurt him all that much. I'm very high on Grayson Waller, but him losing is fine. But I see this guy being fast tracked. Like if this guy's in NXT by the summer, I'd be very surprised. Like I
think you could say that for a handful of current people, in NXT. I mean, for all the flack that 2.0 has had, it's a system that at this point, a year in plus has worked to actually develop plenty of guys that, we wouldn't bat an eye if they got called up, and I'm sure they would actually be successful.
Yeah. But by the way, this segment, like just some of the lines that Grayson had, I mean, the crowd's going nuts for Sean as they do for just anyone of note that shows up. And Grayson noting that 10-year-old him would be losing his mind like these fans, but present day Grayson, he'd be saying, I'd rather be a Bret Hart guy. And that just began, and he's just running down Sean, saying that you're treating me just like Vince treated you. You weren't a draw, but you proved him wrong, and now you're holding me back. The only reason you're sitting there in Gorilla is because your best friend had a heart attack. And Sean noting that, well, you make some points here, but I stepped in for Hunter because of all he had done for me, and I steer the ship now. And in all of this, it was like Sean never dropped the facade of this like professional wrestling show. It's like, you are not being held back, because I always hate these in storyline where it's like, what does being held back mean in a quasi sports environment like this?
Well, in the UFC, you guys could complain about being held back if they're not getting the right opportunities.
There is, but Sean tied it here. It's like, you're not being held back. You lost a title match at Vengeance Day. You lost the big one, and that's why you are not challenging for the title. And it's just Grayson tearing down NXT. He hates this place. It's the same fans here every week wearing the same clothes, and I'm the biggest box office star, and he wants to drive this brand into the ground. And that's when Sean stands up to him and says, you will not disgrace NXT and these fans, and I would love to beat your ass at Stand and Deliver. This is after the challenge is made by Waller, but there's someone who wants to kick your ass even more, and that's when Johnny Gargano comes out and attacks Waller, and he'll be on NXT next Tuesday as well to speak, and his first appearance since his contract expired, and he gave that farewell speech at the end of 2021. So it's a very solid number 2 match for Stand and Deliver, and for some it might be the top match at Stand and Deliver, with Braun Breaker and Carmelo Hayes also made, which was a very good segment. I thought overall Braun Breaker, between the segment with Carmelo Hayes and the 6-man he had, like him and the Creeds are a great trios tandem. Like I thought they were just terrific together. And against Indus Sher and Jinder Mahal, you're not working with the most dynamic trio to begin with, but the three of them, just with the matching singlets, like they had something with those three.
It feels very natural the moment you see them all together. Of course, like the Steiners' pedigree with amateur wrestling, and just stylistically mixing in there with the Creeds, the fact that they all kind of came up at around the same time. I mean, I don't know how long Diamond Mine is going to really be sticking around, but this is a trio that I would love to see like be a long-term sort of association, and even all the way up towards the main roster, because I think it's almost like Hulk needing his friends who are a tag team. I think they all help each other.
And the other segment on the show was the end of the main event where Roxanne Perez defeated Meiko Satomura to retain the NXT Women's title, but took a beating in the process. And as her arm is being raised, she faints in the ring. This felt very much a direct copy of the angle that really did catapult Shawn Michaels into that main event babyface with the match with Owen
Are we
Hart.
just redoing all of Sean's like career angles at this point?
We got the barbershop a few weeks ago. Now the collapsing angle. So I'm sure Carmelo, the boyhood dream, will come true at Stand and Deliver potentially, and
somebody will come back after a several year layoff. What else?
Someone will be scheduled to work WrestleMania weekend and get a knee injury ahead of time. So lots to draw from. But she collapses, and they take her out into the stretcher, and taken off in the ambulance to end the show. So they had previously set up Tiffany Stratton going for the women's title. So that is most likely the match that we are getting at Stand and Deliver.
Yeah. Wasn't there somebody like challenging her? But yeah, sure. It's interesting. I thought it came across pretty well. The match with Meiko Satomura I thought was okay. Maybe the atmosphere wasn't didn't make it feel maybe as important as I thought it would. But I mean, it's all to set up WrestleMania weekend anyway.
Right. And we also saw Dragon Lee on the show for the first time. He was introduced in the crowd, and it would seem to make sense to have him have his first match at Stand and Deliver as well, so you're pretty much getting the card put together pretty quickly, because you only have a few weeks to get this all together. Did you see the Breaker Carmelo Hayes segment?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I thought it was really well done. Like, they're just going in. It's not even like Hayes is playing the heel. It's just, we're the top two guys of this NXT 2.0 era, and we knew it from the start that we were going to be the leaders of this thing, and our paths have never crossed, and now they are. And this is just, it's like number one versus number two. It's the top two guys that have never met, and they're going to meet on the big show for the NXT Championship. I like just the simpleness of it, and it feels like a big match because it's been the match that just naturally as a viewer, it's the one that you have been led to want for months.
It feels like, like a Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior type of situation, 1A and 1B. And I think a lot more crowd support at this point for Carmelo Hayes and people wanting to see him get crowned. Now, who's going to win this match? I think will be kind of anyone's guess, because I think both of them are, ready for a call up. And I wonder if Hayes even needs the NXT Championship, or if he'll just get, a straight call up. So, but I think it makes for a really compelling, big feeling title match for a WrestleMania weekend.
MLW filed their amended complaint. They had 3 weeks to do so after the judge had dismissed their initial complaint against WWE. So on Monday, it was a 53-page amendment that came in. So to bring everyone up to speed, recently we saw the Variety report that had stated that Reels, with this new deal with Peacock, where they cannot air that window of the 2-hour MLW window along with the 2-hour West Coast feed. So it's like 4 hours that get impacted on the Peacock streaming version of Reels. So in the Variety report, it stated that Reels was going to be dropping MLW after 10 weeks, which we are at the midway point of that period. Now, Reels did not confirm nor deny that 10-week timeline, just stating that they are dedicated to having a satisfying outcome for all parties, which I think would be very hard to read if you're MLW, who are just seem to be unknown, like what the fate of their show is going to be after just getting picked up and this promotion of a new show for them on Reels. So anyway, they had specified the violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act regarding WWE's share of the pro wrestling media market. So instead of accusing WWE of having this this gigantic market share of the pro wrestling space. They're trying to narrow it in to pretty much their ability to control what they cite as 92% of the pro wrestling media market when it comes to television deals and revenue that they generate from those deals. And again, these are MLW and their legal team's estimates that AEW controls about 6% of that pie, and less than 2% are spread among everyone else, with MLW included in all of that. They cited the exclusivity that WWE has on Peacock affecting their deal with Reels, and also bringing up historical leveraging by WWE when it came to TNN replacing ECW with WWE in 2000, attempting to block ROH from running Madison Square Garden back in 2019 for the Supercard of Honor show, or the G1 Supercard show, and blocking AEW from running the Heritage Bank Center in Cincinnati, also trying to hire MLW talent, WWE running events over Labor Day weekend to hurt AEW last year, and interference with MLW's deals with Tubi, Vice, and Fight. So from the amended complaint itself, this is the updated part they have about the Reels deal. Most recently, WWE's predatory conduct further impeded MLW in its ability to compete in the licensing of its programming for distribution on streaming services, and continues to threaten to deprive MLW of its ability to license its programming for distribution on cable. As a result of WWE's misconduct, MLW is at risk of its business being irreparably destroyed. In February 2023, MLW's new media partner, Reels, announced a distribution deal with streaming service Peacock. But as a direct result of WWE's exclusivity agreement with NBC Universal, which prohibits any other professional wrestling programming on Peacock, MLW's programming is excluded from the streaming deal, which further suppresses competition in the relevant market. MLW is also reportedly at risk of losing its cable deal with Reels as a result of the exclusivity. And MLW is seeking compensatory, treble, and exemplary damages arising from WWE's unlawful conduct and injunctive relief, and causing further irreparable harm through its anti-competitive and tortious conduct. So that is, it seems like they are trying to be more specific as in terms of the media monopoly that WWE has, and now this judge is going to have to take this and determine if this is a more relevant case than the prior complaints that MLW made, and if this exclusivity, I mean, is this a case of specific to the Reels deal? Is this something specific to WWE or Peacock that also entered into that exclusivity, and like what falls upon Peacock as well? Right.
Their argument, though, is that simply because they are WWE, they are able to push that weight around, right? I had wondered if, because this is an amendment for something that had began at this point, like a year ago, like quite a while ago, if they could mention like a current event like this Reels thing. And obviously the answer is yes, because the overall argument that they're trying to state is that WWE is such a juggernaut, so big that it's impossible for anybody else to get a foothold even in this industry. And it's been a very unfortunate series of events for MLW, but maybe a silver lining is the fact that they have what might be one of their strongest arguments in this case come up as a result of this Reels Peacock thing. Is it enough to convince a judge? That's the big question.
Yeah, to me, the argument would be is like, if you are WWE and you are arguing that MLW, it's like your competition is anything on television, it is not specific to pro wrestling. Well, then MLW should be like any other program that exists on Reels. You are specifically outlining like they are a competitor to you, as opposed to any other program. On Patrol Live is not competition to WWE and this exclusivity, but MLW is. So that is one way to navigate this. The other is going to be a judge having to determine, like, is this exclusivity clause considered fair? Like, if you negotiated this, is this fair practice? And he may very well say, like, this was something WWE negotiated and Peacock agreed to it, and it's Peacock simply holding themselves to their contractual obligation with WWE, and therefore MLW, there's no there's no argument that they could be very damaged in this if they end up being dropped by Reels. And that's going to be for the judge to determine if that's a predatory action by WWE or simply MLW not being properly informed by Reels that we're in negotiations with Peacock that has this exclusivity. Like somewhere in all of this, there was some poor communication that they're launching this competitive brand on Reels while at the same time negotiating with Peacock that has an existing exclusivity and relationship with WWE. Like this, in most cases, you would think this would not have gotten to this point where at some point you would say, well, we're on the precipice of this Peacock deal and MLW is about to launch and we have to make a choice here because we know what's coming with this Peacock deal that represents a lot more to us than what MLW launching on our network is going to be.
Hard to know without maybe knowing some of the specifics of the timelines or the people working on those specific deals within these, very large companies. I'm very curious to hear the result of this amendment.
New Japan Cup, the first round is almost over. So thus far, we have got the second round matches of Sonata versus Kenta, Tetsuya Naito versus Chase Owens, Evil against Jeff Cobb, with Evil beating Ren Narita earlier today, and then Mark Davis, who beat Toru Yano and will now face his Aussie Open stablemate Will Ospreay in the second round. And I was thinking Yano would get the upset here and have a comedy match with Will Ospreay, but in fact, they're going to do the Aussie Open versus...
Should have placed a bet on it.
I wonder if New Japan is exploring this newfound revenue potential. And then on the other side of the bracket, David Finlay defeated Tomohiro Ishii on the New Japan Anniversary show. He takes on Great-O-Khan, and Zack Sabre Jr. will face Shota Umino. And then the remaining opening round matches take place on Friday with Kyle Fletcher against Yoshihashi. The winner of that takes on Goto. So most likely, I would think Fletcher wins that match instead of Goto versus his partner Yoshihashi. But who knows? Maybe Yoshihashi is going to go on this run after closing off the anniversary show. And then Shingo Takagi takes on Aaron Hanare following the anniversary result where Hanare pinned Takagi, and that winner takes on Tama Tonga in the second round. So I'm thinking David Finlay is going pretty far in this as he seems to be the massive project at the moment.
So if he wins, though, he gets a title shot, right?
He would get the title shot on April 8th. I don't know if he wins this, but I do see him going at least to the Final Four. That would be my guess.
Right. Yeah. Because I don't know if he's ready for a championship match, nor do I think he should be losing a championship.
Sumo Hall is a big venue, and you're right. He might be someone you're earmarking more for the big run in the G1 or something like that. Like you could certainly go to Okada and Naito again. Okada and Ospreay seems a little too early to be going that direction because I think Ospreay should be a long-term, going for the title again. Or the idea of I think Okada and Shingo, you've kind of exhausted that one at this point. So there's a few options here, but you're certainly looking at somebody that you're confident can headline Sumo Hall. And then lastly is the ratings notes. I don't believe the NXT numbers are out yet, but Raw did 1,827,000 viewers and a 0.52 in the demo. So up 3% in viewership. First on cable. I would call this a minor disappointing number just in the sense that it's a good number by usual standards, but with John Cena and Logan Paul to a lesser extent, like this was a big show. It moved a ton of tickets, so you knew that there was a lot of interest in this. But this was lower than Cena's return on Raw last June when they did his return in Laredo, Texas, that did over 1.9 million viewers. Again, this is still it's still a fine number, but I would say by the parameters of a John Cena promoted return, I thought this one might hit 2 million viewers. I thought this was going to be that big of a show, and so a little lower than I expected.
Were there reasons related to competition that you feel like might have prevented them from getting the? I mean, there was some like news coverage, but there was no big sports event going out against them. Like on cable, like they destroyed what was next above them. Like they nearly doubled the next biggest program on cable. And then in terms of network programming, like they went against The Voice, 911 on Fox, and maybe the culprit way, The Bachelor on ABC. Tell me, is there a lot of buzz for The Bachelor this year? It was third for the night. Well, I'm not watching, so
Okay.
not that much buzz in my household, at least.
Well,
Zach.
Is that who is the Bachelor this season?
Yes. I think his name is Zach.
Okay. And China documentary on Sunday night did 481,000 viewers and a 0.14. So kind of in between the previous two. It was down from the NWO doc, but up from the Jake one. And then Rivals between Cena and Rock, 387,000 and a 0.12, which is the lowest of the three Rivals this season, but identical in the demo from last week's on Mankind and Triple H, or Mankind and The Undertaker Rivals. This week, the bio is on Kane. Will you be watching 2 hours about Glenn Jacobs? No. And Rivals will be on Triple H and Batista. And the UFC prelims on Saturday night, they did 1,234,000 viewers. This was following a really big college game with Duke. So they were second for the night and also did 82,000 viewers on ESPN Deportes. And for Saturday night, ESPN had the top 10 cable spots. Not a bad night for ESPN. So there you go. That is all your latest. For the record, on Sunday, F1 was number 2 on cable.
Okay.
So not bad for Bahrain. And F1's off this weekend and back the following weekend, correct?
Yeah, but we won't be off. We'll be talking about Drive to Survive tomorrow in the Post Wrestling Cafe.
That is right. Because you know what? Sometimes you might believe that the best way to watch F1 is on your television. But you know what? I would love to know what Turkish F1 coverage is like, Way. And would you have any suggestion on how I could find the Turkish delight of F1 coverage?
It's really interesting that you mentioned that. Because I mean, Turkish F1 coverage it's the same. At one point it was considered though. So you know about F1 TV, right?
Yes.
It's like a service. It's essentially the WWE network, but for F1. Like you get to, watch their archives. You get to get the shows and the races right after the fact, all the qualifying rounds and all that. And for a long time, Turkey would be the place that you would go to sign up for a cheaper version. But that's since actually been caught. So like they've kind of changed that, but you can go to other places. And that is why we have to talk about our sponsor of this particular podcast, NordVPN. John, as you mentioned it, who doesn't like to save money these days? It's really, really important to try to penny pinch and really do all you can. They announced the an update on the inflation rate here in Canada today. Thankfully, no increase just yet, but we're all anxious about it. But even without all of that, I'm the type of guy who likes to even go through the trouble of signing up for a fake email just to kind of save 10% through a mailing list. But I don't really have to do that a whole lot because with something like NordVPN, take for instance this past weekend, we all just experienced an AEW pay-per-view weekend. Most of us in North America probably ordered it for $40. The pro tip, as I've been informed, John.
Oh man.
Is that we could have bought this show for half the price by purchasing through the UK or Australia, where it's only $20. Come on, how did that happen? I thought we were preferred citizens here. You think John Jones is the only person who can pretend to be British? No, you too can pretend to be a Brit through NordVPN. Get your AEW pay-per-view. You could have gotten it at half price, but it's not just AEW pay-per-views. Other subscription services like Netflix or even F1 TV through certain places are available for cheaper prices in other countries. You can even book flights, rental cars, hotels from different places that may offer cheaper prices by disguising your IP. Not to mention all the benefits of being able to watch events geo-blocked in your location and the many cybersecurity features. A Nord subscription costs as little as $3.35 a month. And for me, it's a service that's already paid for itself several times over. This is also the final week where Nord is going to have its 11th birthday offer, where every purchase of a 2-year plan will get you an additional bonus of 3 months or 1 year added to your subscription. And if you sign up right now through nordvpn.com/postwrestling, you also get a bonus month on top of that. So a minimum bonus of 4 months on all 2-year plans for as little as $3.35 a month. nordvpn.com/postwrestling. Try for 30 days and get your money back if you don't like it. Again, nordvpn.com/postwrestling. Let them know you found out about this through Post.
check that out. And if you are traveling and need to hide your IP, please shoot a message to Wai and explain why you need to do that, and we will definitely read it on the show. So nordvpn.com/postwrestling is where you can go support them to support us. On to our schedule coming up this week. Wai and I are back on Thursday. It is Post Wrestling Cafe's F1 coverage continuing as we are going through season 5 of Drive to Survive. On the docket on Thursday, we are going to be going through episodes 4, 5, and 6. Correct?
Correct. You got it, John.
Whew. I watched the correct ones. We are also going to be joined by one of our listeners, an F1 expert, J.A.S, who will be on the program to share her thoughts on these 3 episodes, as well as the opening weekend of the 2023 F1 season, as Red Bull were storming into Bahrain, and it was, as a famous Spice Girl once said, it was Bahraining men in the form of Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez.
Yes, it was
1-2.
Yeah. It looks to be, a season of dominance yet again from Red Bull. But I think most interesting is the battle for second team. And what none of us really expected was, at least last year, was what the great leap that Aston Martin has taken. Spearheaded by Fernando Alonso, and also, hey man, Lance Stroll, not such a joke anymore. He might be the new he might be the GSP of this entire thing. Forget Sami Zayn. Lance Stroll is the Canadian we need to represent.
I did not realize that this man did the equivalent of like Triple H gutting his way through a quad tear with his toe injury. My God.
A hand and wrist injury. Like several things seem broken. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about Lance Stroll on the program Thursday. I'm looking forward to this. I said a few weeks ago that during the off season, I'm not really following this. I have realized I am definitely not a transactional fan of F1, and the drama of it playing out on Drive to Survive, very entertaining. But during the off season, I'm kind of tuned out. And the second I started getting back into the season, I was glued to my TV on Sunday. I'm texting Wai. I'm so back into F1 this week. I'm very excited to talk about Bahrain on Thursday. So check that out, postwrestlingcafe.com. And you can also go back, free episode last week, going through the first 3 episodes with the great Chris Elliott, who will be back before the end of the month as we conclude our Drive to Survive season 5 analysis. Friday night, we have Rewind to SmackDown minutes after Rampage. You can join us there. A new edition of Postmarks will drop on Saturday with John Cena chatting with Bruce Lord and David Myers, and a great article up on the site today from Bruce Lord discussing the era of the Switchblade in New Japan Pro Wrestling, from Young Lion to backstabbed by his longtime friend and enemy David Finlay. So a great analysis by Bruce Lord as Jay White departs New Japan Pro Wrestling. But all of that and more can be found at postwrestling.com, and you can support the site postwrestlingcafe.com. Many bonus shows each and every week coming your way, and video.postwrestling.com to see Wai's pristine, crystal clear image.
Oh goodness, it's so good, especially today. But let's give it up also for John Pollock's Road Diary. Okay, getting rave reviews. I think the Oscars I think are already set, unfortunately this year. But I think it's getting some buzz for next year. So in the best documentary or short film category, I think. So do check that out right now as well in the Patreon.
The Ken Burns of post wrestling, John Pollock.
That is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look out. On to Dynamite we go. Tonight's show, Sacramento, California. 5,400 tickets out, according to WrestleTix. Another great crowd in Sacramento. They were pretty lively for, I would say, the key parts of the show. I wouldn't put this in like the top tier of AEW audiences, but that's still a pretty good crowd, I thought.
I thought they sounded pretty good. Yeah, maybe a little step down. I mean, from what I hear, the capital of California is here. Maybe just people that are a bit more serious and professional, perhaps, than Oakland and San Francisco, that rowdy bunch. But still, a very good crowd.
The opening video was all highlights from Revolution, and then Excalibur noted it's International Women's Day. You know what that means, and happy
International Women's Day, and
congratulations to and happy International Women's Day to every female listening to our show right now.
Yes,
every one of you. We appreciate your following of our show. I don't know what our female skew is, but
It's like 2%.
this show is dedicated to you.
It's very low, but all the more reason for us to celebrate.
Orange Cassidy and Jay Lethal for the All-Atlantic Championship. More on that to come. And this is their third match. So Lethal beat Cassidy last August, and then Cassidy won the rematch in January. So this is the rubber match. And Danhausen is out in a sling, which they said was a result of the 310 to Yuma by the Guns. And these are two of the most consistent performers that, I mean, how many of these matches between these two, not even with each other, just on their own, ever miss? I think these are as two as like sure things when it comes to TV matches.
Yeah, I would say so for absolutely the both of them when they're together. I think for me maybe more pronounced has been Orange Cassidy constantly defending this All Atlantic Championship, and every single one of these matches is almost always good, and that goes for Lethal as well.
So the story of this is that Lethal gets his shoulder damaged early on, and then he attacks Orange Cassidy's knee with a dragon screw. And this match, like, if anyone is going to like knock like Orange Cassidy, like what a completely silly argument at this juncture, but man,
yeah.
He, like, both guys I thought were phenomenal in this match, and this was all about selling. It was like who could outsell the other with their injured body part. And that was it. It was a simple match, but the crowd loved it. And it was so engaging throughout. You've got Orange Cassidy selling, and then the stun dog gets blocked, but he manages a vertical suplex and goes for the diving DDT, but in doing so, injures his knee. And as much as I talked about with like MJF selling the knee on Sunday, this was an extension of that, where these two, they're both going for this to either retain or win the title. So they're taking risks, but all of those risks had the backlash of injuring their body part in the process of doing so. There was a cost to all of their offense. Orange Cassidy goes for the orange punch, and his knee gives out. So Lethal applies the figure four. He fights to the rope. They're fighting on the edge, and then Lethal lifts him up for a military press, and he drops him on his feet so that his knee buckles. It's like, I don't think I've ever seen that. And what a simple maneuver to mess up the knee. Lethal combination. He's holding onto his arm as he climbs to the top for the elbow drop using the bad arm, and Cassidy gets the knees up, further damaging the arm. Then we see Lethal super kick Orange Cassidy's knee, and he goes for the lethal injection. But as he goes upside down, the shoulder gives out, and he just crashes down and leaves him open for the orange punch as Cassidy retains in 14 minutes and 45 seconds. Dude, I love this match. I thought it was so awesome.
It was a really, really strong match. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if it's kind of unfortunate, but it's hard for me to remember like some of the other ones. I mean, the most recent was January, and maybe it's because the quality of these Orange Cassidy matches have been all like pretty high that it just kind of blends in at this point. But this was no exception. And if somebody said this was the best of the three, I wouldn't really disagree, because I think psychologically this was incredibly strong. I thought Lethal's, not just his selling of his shoulder, but I thought his work over Orange Cassidy's leg was very strong and very, varied and exciting. And I think it's a match that, despite being a rubber match, was missing the sizzle and the anticipation. And part of that is because we're just coming off of a pay-per-view, so they haven't exactly had a whole lot of time to really tell the story. I also feel like it might be something just with Jay Lethal, where like, as I think consistent in ring as he is, and as successful of a heel team he's formed with Jeff Jarrett right now, I kind of feel like throughout his almost entire career, he's kind of had a thing where people respect what he does, but I don't know how excited they necessarily get. So is that something that, is on its way to changing? When this match was announced, I saw a bit of criticism for it, for people thinking that they had already seen enough of it. But I don't know how anybody could come out of this complaining at all, because it was a very strong match.
I thought this was easily the best match on the whole show. I thought it was really, really solid stuff. And Lethal took the Golden Globe afterward, and Bryce is following up the ramp, and that leaves Orange Cassidy in the ring alone as Jeff Jarrett sneaks from behind, hits the stroke, and then breaks the guitar over Orange Cassidy's knee Best friends run down to chase Jarrett away, who had a ton of heat, and this will set up next week's title match that we will get to later in a very interesting segment.
Has Jeff Jarrett had a singles match in AEW?
A singles match. I believe he's at a singles match.
Okay, well, they seem pretty rare, and Jeff Jarrett versus Orange Cassidy almost feels like something that like we would have seen at spring break, maybe not that long ago. But there's no kind of, so let's look it up here, because I'm actually curious. I have a cage match, and I don't know if he's had a singles match thus far in AEW.
Yeah, you're right. It's all been tags.
So hey,
tags
a big
and
deal.
battle royals.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in terms of stature, I'm curious to see what this looks like. Again, Cassidy has been incredibly consistent. Jeff Jarrett has surprisingly been very entertaining, and I think very effective in his role in a tag team. What can he bring in a single setting, and can this match live up to the standard that Orange Cassidy has set for this run?
Yeah, it's I think it'll be, I go to say it'll be a very different match from the Jay Lethal one, but it might not be all that different. You're obviously going to be working on the knee again, and it's going to be and there's certainly the possibility of a title change.
Yes. Yeah. Hey man, who better to maybe take the house show title than the guy putting the house shows together?
I mean, it's a belt you can certainly have on the road with
internationally.
Internationally. They showed the video that Wardlow had posted of someone breaking into his rental car and stealing everything in it, including his championship belt, his gear, his boots, and he cut quite the promo in his online video afterwards. He was going to, if he found the person, he would break their jaw, which would be shattered like the windows in his car rental. I hope he got the insurance on this thing.
On the title or the car?
On the car. I hope he.
I hope so too. Yeah, I hope so too.
I usually decline it.
You're taking a risk, and
I know
most of the time I think you'll be okay. But thank goodness you're not TNT champion. This isn't the first time a TNT or AEW championship has been stolen. Of course,
no.
Chris Jericho famously.
It's now an official AEW belt. It's officially been indoctrinated. They
really should have stolen the All Atlantic. I mean, it's going to get renamed and replated anyway. So, but yeah, stolen. But I love the fact that they kind of used it as part of the story, and it just made this overall like title match feel kind of that much more significant and special because of all the circumstance.
Is this stolen title going to show up on WWE programming?
Well, would Wardlow go after the person wearing it if he's promised to break their
jaw? I don't know. Yeah, they did what they could here, and just kind of like it naturally feeds into a story like that this was set up to be. I mean, you even had Samoa Joe joking about that he was behind it and stuff like that. So I mean, what else are you going to do?
No, you play with it. You play with reality and turn a story out of it.
Renee, she did about 5,000 interviews on this show. The first one was with Powerhouse Hobbs, who says it's unfortunate what happened to Wardlow. His life is in shambles. Is his life in shambles over the, like, this sucks to get your rental broken into and your gear's gone, but is your life in shambles from a car break-in?
Well, he lost his hair as well. You have to remember that.
Yeah. Okay. I think he's okay, like in the grand scheme of things. Like,
well, after tonight, I guess you could ask him again.
Yeah, but this preceded the result. He says the only thing Wardlow has left is his championship, and I'm taking that tonight. I was like, he actually does not have that.
He said he has the title of champion.
He has the title of he is.
Yeah.
But so how did they explain why there was this new belt already created tonight? Like, they couldn't have made a belt like overnight.
I think they must have backups.
Like, they must have TV belts, and then. But
yeah, from what I hear about WWE, like they have the ones that travel for this specific occasion. Like if somebody forgets it, if it gets lost in the luggage or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Always have the backup TNT title.
They could just go to the merch stand too and probably get a few.
That's true. You probably have like 80 fans in your arena that are TNT champions that you can borrow the belt from. Ricky Starks is out. He said he's been having a hell of a week in California, beat Jericho. He's not sure what's next for him or where he's going to go next. And with that, the Bullet Club theme plays, and you've got the whole crowd buzzing because I think they were assuming maybe this is Jay White, but it is instead Juice Robinson.
On the scale of like Bullet Club members, like where does Juice Robinson rank at this point?
Above Chase Owens and below El Phantasmo.
Yeah, I would say maybe significantly below. So Juice Robinson is in AEW. Everybody, like we kind of forget, but thank goodness they have this relationship with New Japan, and he's able to use that logo as part of his gimmick now. Because unfortunately, it's all Juice Robinson has, and if there's any interest in this interaction, it's because they saw that logo.
So he hits Ricky Starks with the left hand of God and spikes him with a DDT. So that's for everyone that was just couldn't wait for Ricky Starks to be done with one of your top heels. Well, here you go, everybody. He's on to Juice Robinson now. So there you got it. Brand new, fresh program, everyone.
Hey, listen, part of the complaint of last cycle was the fact that they spent too long with Jericho. And I'm sure Ricky Starks has Tony probably has big plans for Starks at Double or Nothing. You don't need to get to it first week. You could spend a few weeks with the Juice Robinson, let him rack up the wins, and then get to the big program. So let's see where this goes. How does Juice feel about a Finley-led Bullet Club?
How does Juice feel about a Finley-led Bullet Club?
Yeah, has he commented? Because they're in the same faction, and then last they were not friends. Last I remember.
Yeah, I guess this is that has to play out. Yeah, maybe Ricky Starks can be moderator for the two to come together. I just see a lot in Ricky Starks. I could see this guy being your top babyface in this company. So we will see. Juice needs to have something big because he is very much a background player, and maybe he's not going to ascend to much.
I don't anticipate this being much more than just like a relatively simple win, but I hope it's more than that because you're right. Juice Robinson, it's rare that he gets airtime, it seems, and I think he could promo, and if these two can have a nice little dance and find a little bit of a feud coming out of it, it could do a whole lot for the both of them.
Shivani interviews Wardlow, who's been he's borrowed an FTR shirt because all his luggage is gone. He asks for a Falls Count Anywhere match tonight with no disqualifications, and he might not physically have the title, but he's still the champion, and no one on earth will take that from him. Renee brings out Ruby Soho, who walks out with Saraya and Toni Storm, but then Ruby comes into the ring by herself, and the crowd is booing Ruby, and she is asked why. Why did you do it on Sunday? And she says the fans created this monster. I was like, oh, great, the fans. But then she went on to give a whole backstory here. She said her first title match in AEW was against Britt Baker at Grand Slam, and the audience was thrilled that she lost. And you even have the fans here chanting DMD. Then I faced Chris Statlander in the semifinals of the Owen Hart tournament. And what was the response? You booed me out of the damn building, which was very true. And everyone was second guessing having Statlander lose to her. And then Jamie Hayter pins me at Revolution, and no one was going to be upset that I lost. No one at AEW was going to appreciate me, so I had to do it for myself. I liked all of this, but I love this line that it was the ending of the match that triggered it for her because it gave you a reason why she was fighting Jamie Hayter for the whole duration of the match, and then aligns with her moments later. She realized in that I am better off with these two than against them, because who am I fighting for? These fans that have they have no love for me. They're rooting for somebody else. And she says that Toni Storm wasn't appreciated by this company. They didn't even label her a real champion. You fans begged Saraya to come out of retirement, and then at the first chance, you fat neck-bearded trolls came at her at a moment's notice. And they've been outcast since they arrived, and you can't build a division on a broken foundation. You can only start new. And the broken foundation is with homegrown stars and entitled rookies. So bring out that entitled rookie, Skye Blue. This was a tremendous promo from Ruby Soho, and the most enjoyable segment of this outsiders, freelancers versus homegrown stars segment they have had since they kicked it off. Like it put everything into its focus for one segment.
Yeah. This was the promo this entire program very sorely needed. This is the promo that Saraya and Tony should have cut themselves the week right after they turned heel. And I'm so thankful that finally somebody representing this faction and really representing this entire storyline has given us a mission statement. They have given us an understanding of what exactly it is that separates these homegrown people from Excalibur actually briefly called them freelancers.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they're freelancers, like, but whatever. Okay. Free.
That'll be their group name, the tier 3 contracts.
That's it. Yeah. But I'm so thankful that like these writers and especially like whoever came up with the segment, they finally made it clear why there's a reason for a feud here, and good delivery from Ruby, I thought as well. You know, I don't really recall her being a heel since the Riot Squad, and I barely can even qualify that as being heel work because that was just, it felt like somebody trying to, I don't know, play. They were like, what were they spray painting then too? So she's very familiar with spray paint, but that was just a much more kind of like, I don't know, that was awful. This was the first time I feel like I've seen Ruby on national TV feel like an actual compelling heel, and I would argue this might have been her best promo period, at least in AEW, probably in WWE as well, because I can't remember any actually that are significant. This was very positive for the feud. I'm actually excited for this feud now, or at least to see what's next. So yeah, big win here.
The only thing I wanted more was I was on the verge of victory and I could not contain my excitement. And what did you fans do? You made me a meme.
She did not mention that. No,
that would have been great. Maybe the only thing for this heel character is that theme song though. It's so,
I know.
I'm almost
they
hoping
have to
that
get rid of it. They do.
They need to Johnny Gargano that theme.
Yo, wow.
Just
So,
have
like,
a terrible cover of Destination or of Ruby Soho.
They got to get David Guetta to remix Ruby Soho, the ultimate heel move.
Oh my gosh. So Ruby Soho and Sky Blue. Excalibur says that Ruby has selective memory. Taz sees that she has a point. And Tony just says, Ruby needs to get over it and move on. So she runs Skye into the post. Blue is on wobbly legs and takes an enziguri, and then there's an STO to Blue. They go through the break. Blue makes a comeback, hits a spin kick off her knees and a high cross, but then Ruby stops the Code Blue and pulls her by the hair to set up Destination Unknown for the win in 6 minutes and 50 seconds. Fine match, but the promo was the star of Ruby Soho's night.
The match wasn't necessarily something that I think anybody was supposed to get excited about. It was more just a re-debut for Ruby Soho and to show that she's got a new edge now as this heel. I thought it was exactly what it needed to be. And, you know, Sky Blue is a generic but effective choice for this role. Somebody that the crowd likes and somebody who's clearly a homegrown talent. So it sets up the post-match as well.
And Saraya and Storm came and they were about to, they started spray painting Sky Blue when Willow Nightingale runs down and she's trying to convince Ruby not to go down this direction. And Saraya and Storm jump Willow from behind and she is hit with no future by Ruby, and they end up spray painting both Willow and Sky Blue, as they are called, these outsiders, these freelancers.
That's what they should be complaining about. The fact that
imagine Hall and Nash, the freelancers.
Well, I mean, I would be pissed off too if I've been freelancing this entire time. I haven't been offered a full-time contract here. So
they invoice Tony after each segment.
Yeah. I like this a lot. You know, not only did Willow here come in very organically, it made sense now why she would have motivation to join the homegrown. They got to come up with some better names for these factions. But I also love the fact that like Ruby name dropped Chris Statlander as well, and now you build up that anticipation. You build up a backstory that's already there for why Chris Statlander would join the homegrown as well. There's a lot of motivation now for, and the sides are like clearly divided. We know why they are fighting, so that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, they got quite a bit out of this. I thought this was the best segment that they have had involved in this whole program to date. Renee, who is constantly on Hangman duty to interview him, this being days after this man hung her husband over the ring to try and choke him to death. He's all busted up in the face here and says that all is well in his soul and his heart after the Texas death match. He had to go into that match with a black heart, and he warns others that he'll take them to hell until life leaves their body. And Renee, I've given you a lot of flack over the weeks, and I apologize for what you had to see on Sunday. Renee just like nods to the camera. Like this was like the equivalent of, I'm really sorry that I ruined your husband's no-hitter in the bottom of the ninth with that single I hit. Like that was like with Renee's like, yeah, it's, I understand how these things go. He says it's not his fault though, and he is done with Jon Moxley.
Mm-hmm.
Or is he?
Yeah. I think the Renee aspect of this entire thing has maybe added a certain level of like maybe realism attached to it, because I think Renee's been playing it so really well. Like she's able to kind of like show a bit of nuance in expressing that she's been through this before, and her husband is her husband. She's had her grief in the past, and she's almost like over it, and she's kind of she gives off the vibe that she's like mentally like severed from caring about her husband in this way, because she knows nothing she could say will stop him. It's added some of that to these interviews, but I hope she's done with this, because I think they're using it too much. And for me, like it definitely felt like too much when she was actively talking and trying to break down this feud on the buy-in. And at this point, I think it almost just like makes these unnecessarily awkward, and I don't think it adds anything.
I feel it's such a hard rule for her, because I think any way she goes, it's going to be so analyzed. Like it just it's totally unfair. But even on the pre-show, when she's referring to him as Jon Moxley, it's just like, it's so weird that she is talking about her husband like with his first and last name. You know what I mean? Like, would your wife ever be referring to you as Wai Ting?
So again, like that's where I think she really, it's clear to me like she thinks a lot about it, and she's trying to find the balance of like, having to play a professional broadcaster who has to, without bias, talk about her husband, who also happens to be a competitor, while also subtly showing concern without revealing it onto the camera. I think she does a good job of it. But you're right. The fact that she's a part of these segments like makes us break it down too much. We're thinking too much, and we're questioning it too much, and it's almost just too distracting.
Then we had a video covering the Iron Man match, and it's MJF doing a post-match promo in the back with a tear in my eye. I thought he was going to do the Flair speech here. He says that the fans should have their brains checked if they thought Danielson would win. He is the devil, and it's time to celebrate because Daddy is single in San Francisco, and notes his birthday next week. A lot of birthdays coming up next week, and he's going to be in wretched Winnipeg, and he is going to have his bar mitzvah in Winnipeg, which could be a tremendous segment. Yeah, absolutely. Really strong post-match promo from MJF here. Face still full of blood after the Iron Man match, and I've never been to a bar mitzvah. So, have you been to a bar mitzvah? I haven't been to a bar mitzvah, period. Have you? I don't think so. Well, I'm excited. Do I have to dress up in a certain way? You might get invited. Maybe to Winnipeg. Well, I think we're all invited. We'll all be watching, right? Anybody watching on TBS will. Do you think he did this promo with pickle juice on his breath? Yeah, was this before? Dude downed a lot of pickles, man. It was like a little uncomfortable. It was quite the promo for those pickles. He was talking about those like they were the greatest thing in the world. And if you were to advertise your food, I mean, clearly these post-pay-per-view press conferences. Didn't we have this discussion at Schwartz's? You're not a pickle guy. I like pickles. I like pickles a lot. Is it Davey that's not a pickle guy? Someone was not a fan of pickles. I don't know, as I recall. Maybe it could have been. It could have been Jesse or Davey. Tony Schiavone brings out FTR. My God, was Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood popular in Sacramento. That's an understatement. And boy, did they know how to take an audience and just milk it. Like they're getting on the turnbuckle, and just this crowd gets to their feet. It's a standing ovation. It was a hell of a response for them. They mentioned how bad the last couple of months have been with all the losses, as well, losing one of their best friends in Jay Briscoe. But Cash says he can't sit at home in good conscience and let the Guns refer to themselves as the best tag team in the world. But he's quick to note, You guys are very good, and you're the future of the division, but you're also spoiled and entitled assholes. Your father gave you everything. My father couldn't give me those advantages or a job with a company, but he taught me how to be respectful, and I'm going to teach that to you. And then Dax takes over, does my favorite. He wants to just tell everyone, I love all of y'all. All of y'all. And he says, you never left me when I felt I couldn't be loved. And we closed off the year with the greatest trilogy of matches of our careers. But the Guns robbed us of our last memory with one of our best friends. Because if you remember, this was the 4 of them in the ring after the dog collar match, and that's when the Guns jumped FTR after that match.
Yes.
And that was when they were going to have like their closing moment with the crowd. So now it's all about retribution for the Guns. A great segment with FTR setting up the tag title match at some point. I don't think this is one you can for what it's worth, and I think people are going to be skeptical of Dax Harwood and what is legit or not, but he is stating that nothing has changed regarding his contract status for April.
Right. Yeah. We haven't spoken a whole lot about maybe all of that. How do you feel about it? Just the fact that it could possibly be a story. Like, are we thinking too much about it? Are we debating it too much? And is that the intent of,
Oh, it's absolutely the intent, but no different than MJF, that I think you have to be under the impression that there is the likelihood that this is just that deals are in place. Like, you have to be open to that, and also leave room for that it could be legit. Like, there is that possibility, and they're going to play on that. I think they want that. I would also argue that I think you sometimes, if you are working this, which certainly they were with all like the Observer graphic and AEW being upset with it. Like, certainly Dax is enough that he is going to use his platform to work his angles, and that's fine. But then if you are telling the truth about something, you're not going to have that buy-in from your audience. There's going to be that natural skepticism of everything that you do.
Sure. Yeah. Just strictly speaking about the on-air product, I thought great stuff from FTR here, a crowd that still loves them more than ever. And I think, pretty much the obvious angle here in being able to somehow tie the emotion attached to a very real, very significant event in the passing of Jay Briscoe to their motivation to want to beat up the Guns and to win the championships, I think creates for immediately a very strong story and a very strong case for a championship contention match. So immediately, I think the tag division feels like it's refreshing with FTR back in the mix.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, like a great, again, if you've got FTR beyond this period, it seems a natural that eventually FTR teams with Mark Briscoe. Like, I think that's just such a natural. It writes itself.
If they're sticking around, yeah.
That's it, of course. Renee is with Jade Cargill and Layla Gray. She's 53-0. She has no challenges left. She's beat everyone here in the U.S., so they're going to Canada next week. So she wants to take on a whack-ass Canadian.
I find it interesting that she can actually, like, they can feel like she can get away with saying she has no challenges left when half this roster, I feel, has, like, not interacted with Jade Cargill.
Yeah.
Like, have we had a Britt Baker match? Have we had a Toni Storm Jade Cargill match? Have we had a Saraya match? Have we had a Ruby match?
No.
So, I mean, I don't know where she's looking for her challenges, but
well, they're freelancers. She needs people that are under contract to the network.
True. Right.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, Jamie Hayter, maybe she's a freelancer too. Secretly. Yeah. Anyway, so who is the whack ass Canadian? The Bunny is, from all accounts, like probably the only regular that's in the women's division. There are other names, of course, they could pull from, from Impact.
Who would be a great one, but I just don't know if it would have the I don't know if it would be Lufisto. Would be a cool name to do. I think it would just be such a great moment for her. I don't know if it would be the biggest surprise for enough people, but it is a name I would think Tony Khan would consider.
Yeah, and I wonder if like Winnipeg would recognize it enough. Courtney Rush is also Rosemary is also from Winnipeg, I believe. Mm-hmm. Courtney Rush. I mean, and I feel like she's recognized and well known enough that like she would get a pretty big reaction. But I don't know if they've brought in too many people from Impact recently. Anyway, yeah, let the speculation begin. But it very likely could be the Bunny.
Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and Daniel Garcia against AR Fox and Top Flight. We have Menard and Parker out in the corner. AR Fox was really good in this match. He did this roll into a double cutter on Garcia and Guevara, then another to Garcia. Sets up a deadlift German by Darius, and then Jericho's in, runs into a one-man Spanish fly by Darius. Dante dives onto Garcia on the floor. Fox hits his implosion senton onto Guevara and Parker. And then Jericho stops the Rana, tries for the walls, but Darius counters with an inside cradle. And it's Hager nailing Darius with the bat from the floor that sets up the Judas effect and the win, with Jericho pinning Darius in 9 minutes and 42 seconds.
I like the fact that AR Foxen is continuing this trios team with Top Flight. They seem to be in a position now where there's kind of like the team that you beat to showcase your trios that you're actually serious about pushing. Unfortunately, it seems to be Top Flight's like kind of only role here in the company. And someday,
how much of the $300,000 do you think they still have left?
I hope they invested all of it. I mean, come on, those paydays aren't easy to come by.
That should be their team name, Compound Interest.
Yeah, buy some index funds and just watch that stuff grow.
It's AR Fox with the GIC.
Lovely. Yeah, you're thinking of another gimmick that I'm sure will be debuting at some point. AR Fox especially, I think, continues to really stand out in these sort of matches. They're getting a lot of airtime, so eventually I think they'll be. They've already built up enough crowd support for people to want to see them get pushed, but someday it'll happen.
That could also be their trio's name, Airtime.
Very nice, yeah. But yeah, no, shoves the J.A.S up there. I'm sure people are happy to see J.A.S officially move on from Ricky Starks.
Yeah, they get on the mic afterwards. Parker noting that it was the greatest trios victory in AEW history, what you had just seen. Menard brings up it's the 1 year anniversary of the group, and that line could not have been delivered more in more of an entertaining manner than Matt Menard delivered it for the audience. And Garcia says they should be the number one contenders for the trios belts.
Angelo Parker also said, light the beam, which is the catchphrase of the Sacramento Kings, because they have like a giant purple beam that they light up from the arena.
And the whole crowd started chanting this.
Yeah. I thought he had said light the beam, which might be something else. But light the beam. You learn so much, from these sports teams. I'm not
sure beats what Go Leafs Go. I mean, wow. Who came up with that one?
It's light the beam. Sure. Yeah.
Jericho calls out the House of Black, and the lights go out, but when they turn on, the Elite is there. And Kenny Omega explains that him and Jericho, they've stayed out of each other's way for the better part of 3 years, and he feels that it's been out of respect to leave each other alone. And Don Callis interferes and says that the Elite established the trios belts. They are the rightful number one contenders. And Chris, I've been friends with you for 33 years, and I agree. You're one of the best wrestlers ever. But you're only the second best wrestler from Winnipeg. And the crowd boos this. And then Callis says, and if I had a few months to train, you'd be number 3.
Great line.
Yeah, very good line from Callis. The lights go out again, and this time Malachi Black is with the House of Black on the screen, stating both teams are equally deserving to be humiliated in their hometown. The lights flicker. Now they're in the arena, and he says to come get them. Huge reaction with the realization that this crowd in Sacramento gets to watch this match on TV next week from the comfort of their home, as we will get a 3-way trios match for the trios belts. I really thought we were going in the direction of just Elite versus J.A.S, but they're doing the big title match next week on television, that's a lot of bodies in there, the 9 people that you're going to have involved, and they have never done this in the short history of the trios division.
Yeah, so for that reason, it has my curiosity. Like, what does a 3-way trios match look like? what chaos.
Very busy.
But if you can trust busy with anybody, I think it would be like, this group.
Think about the talent of these 9 that are in there.
Oh,
like
incredible.
It's going to be,
Yeah.
it has the potential to be incredible, and you're going to have a tremendous crowd. And I guess our first Jericho Omega interaction in AEW, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they had the match, didn't they? Wasn't there a Jericho Omega match? Jericho versus Omega AEW. By the way, Ruby Soho lost to Jade Cargill in the TBS title tournament, so that match occurred. Double or Nothing 2019.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Right.
So there was that. Yeah. And then like Stadium Stampede, like all this stuff.
Okay, well, thank you. There we go. In a long time, okay?
In a long time, yeah. And like it's never happened in Winnipeg. That's significant. So I felt like that would have been enough. But I mean, not everybody is going to care about the Winnipeg aspect of it all. But this also tells me that like we're not going to get another singles rematch from the Elite versus House of Black. This seems like it might be their rematch, unless of course they win, which I guess it could go either way. Who do you wait a second. So next week is it. Like, do we get a one-on-one trios match coming out of this with either of the teams?
Well, the natural would be that, one team loses and the other is not beaten, that you could continue it. So I could certainly see potentially this being the direction for J.A.S. after this. Like, I don't know if you could spin off into multiple directions from next week, that it doesn't have to be necessarily one and done.
What I'm curious about is will next week be the end of the Elite as a trios? If they lose that title challenge, is that when they would break up?
I don't see them breaking up. I just see them going in different directions, but still having the unit that
that's what I mean.
Go back to it. Yeah.
Like, right. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That it could certainly go that way. Then we go to a backstage segment where Tony Khan states that Orange Cassidy has requested a match with Jeff Jarrett next week, and he is granting it. It will be the 5th and final defense of the All-Atlantic Championship on international soil. It's also the only title to have changed hands on international soil when Cassidy won it in Toronto. So in partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery and Shazam Fury of the Gods, this will become the AEW International Title as we level up the championship. Now, he explained this. This is one of the only times I have had to rewatch a segment on AEW. I had to take time out to rewind. I was like, what did I just listen to? What does Shazam Fury of the Gods have to do with renaming this championship? Like, what is this partnership? And what are like, I get it. We've got a tie-in here with a big DC film, and they aired a trailer after this with Cassidy and Jarrett cut into the trailer with highlights. Yeah. So I guess this is a great promotional spot for them. But yeah, an
Excalibur rundown of like 50 matches was a bit easier to understand. Unfortunately, like
I just didn't know what he was explaining here.
The bottom line is,
they
showed the graphic. You understood that the title was getting changed, but I thought it was a very poor. And take it from a guy who's done a few live reads at this point. I thought it was a pretty poor, like, just kind of like wedging in of like a commercial tie-in that like only served to maybe confuse. And the fact that he said like he was trying to like say all this stuff about like this being the final international defense of this All Atlantic Championship, like initially made it seem like the All Atlantic Championship would be continuing, but just no longer it would be exclusively defended in the US or something like that. The phrasing I certainly feel like could have been better with all of this stuff, and the kind of product placement I thought was a bit forced.
Tony is not the pitch man. Like he is. Like that is the role of a Renee, of a Tony Schiavone. You have people that I think you could have had fun with Orange Cassidy delivering this message.
And he let Adam Cole take over the All Access announcement, probably because he understands that. But there is like sort of like an official like authenticity that you get when you have Tony Khan, who's not a polished, on-air presenter, convey it. I think it's fine to have him do it. I just think the script probably needed to be a bit more concise and clear.
So yes, after this All-Atlantic title was introduced and everyone questioned the name for about a week, and then Never said another thing afterwards. All these months later, now we're going to change the name of it. And now it's the international title. I thought they were going to name it like the Shazam title or something.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. Yeah.
Who is the Fury of the God? Who has drawn the Fury of the God?
Is it Jeff Jarrett?
Yes. Shazam. Is Jeff Jarrett going to, are Cassidy and Jeff Jarrett going to have to cut promos?
This was like, what followed this was maybe the most surreal thing about it, was just to see like this Shazam
seamless
trailer and to see Jeff Jarrett in my Shazam Fury of the Gods trailer.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about going from Shazam Fury of the Gods to Bryan Danielson on the brink of his mortality. So that's what we come back from. It is Danielson's post-match interview after losing the Iron Man match, and he's on the floor. He's beside himself, stating, "I always thought I was doing this for my kids and teaching them if you love something, you have to fight for it. But Max was right, and he believed in fighting and never giving up. But then I found myself in the label lock, and my instinct was to fight. But then I lost the feeling in my arm, and I realized MJF was right. I was putting myself in front of playing with my kids." And there they have a shot of him in the ring playing with his kids. But tapping out to choose to be healthy for his kids made him more ashamed than anything. And now it's time to go home. So of all the BCC members who are going to get that fishing trip, it's going to be Bryan Danielson ahead of Jon Moxley, who's going to get his vacation.
Yeah, I wonder if he does much fishing. Like, isn't he like a vegetarian or something?
He used to talk about like collecting like clams and stuff on the he was into that for a while and stuff. He's
clams?
Yeah, he was seriously like wanted to go on some like anyway, I can't remember all of Danielson's interesting hobbies and such, but yeah, so Danielson is either going home and probably coming back a heel, maybe. I think like if you're following like this BCC story and where maybe Danielson's turn is coming.
It seems like they specifically, had Danielson exit the group so that he wouldn't have to be caught up in a heel BCC. And if that's the play, then I think it's a brilliant move, because I think people are going to have a much harder time booing Bryan Danielson than they will any of the other members. I thought this was a tremendous promo from Bryan Danielson after his loss. It's one thing to just maybe be physically beaten down, but this is a promo where he admitted that he was mentally broken by MJF. It to me like put over MJF far stronger than I think simply, I don't know, being stretchered out would have. Here is a guy who was beaten up so badly that he made the choice to retire, even though he physically fought so hard to come back. I thought Bryan conveyed this amazingly. And I think just the play itself to have him, exit in this fashion works out in so many ways. It works out for MJF and certainly works out for the BCC. So a wonderful write-off. And I can see him like no longer being a part of the BCC when he comes back. I could see him being the guy to disagree with their philosophy.
Yeah, different directions you can go with them. But the remaining BCC members on camera are Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and they've got Wheeler Yuta with them for the match against the Dark Order. So when this match got announced the other day, I definitely thought it was curious that you're putting Jon Moxley on television right after this Texas death match. But I was like, okay, let's see how this plays out, because that could be a big story of the match. He comes out, and this is not a case of them ignoring the Texas death match. It was prominent with the Hangman promo and throughout the commentary here. But he comes out, and like I just thought it did somewhat like diminish the Texas death match. Like, here's the guy that lost this brutal match. He's hung, and in this match, like he's not affected by it. He's strong in winning this. Obviously, they're going this new direction with him, but I did feel it jarring from what we just saw Sunday. And he's back, and he's like, he had like less damage on him than Hangman did.
Yeah, he did. I understand the complaint, and I feel like in many cases I would like jump onto that argument as well. In this instance, I didn't really feel that way, and I think it's because for me the Texas death match was much more of it was a very physical battle, but as far as like the loss goes, that was much more of sort of like a loss of pride Like this was a long-standing feud between these two, both men who completely refused to die. But especially in somebody like a Jon Moxley losing in that fashion, the guy who kind of preaches violence and absolute domination, when he tapped out to a move, like
it's identical to Danielson. Like they both tapped, and one's ashamed of it, and the other, it was like the tap wasn't even really brought up in this.
But I think to me, it came across in the way he like wrestled this match. He wrestled this match like a guy who was like so ashamed that he did that he's going to take it out on the smallest guy. He felt like a bully to me, the type of bully who, like might have had some issue at home and is taking it out on a poor victim. They're like whichever version of like, a Silver and a Reynolds that they might find, in a locker room. He felt like a bully that was taking out his frustrations and his aggression on somebody weaker than him. And for that reason, I felt like he did sell it. It was just far more subtle than just, selling an injury, though.
Did it have to be this week? Could we have done this? To me, it was just the proximity to the death match. I think he could have done this exact portrayal and have all of this like baggage from tapping out that you're going this direction now. It gives him that motivation. Did it have to be this week of all weeks? I
guess I didn't have an issue with it because he seems like the Jon Moxley character seems to be the type that wants to immediately avenge this. He's so bothered by it that he can't sit at home. And again, like we've seen this guy like take a lot of damage like in his matches, week to week to week. And
but he's never had to tap before. He's never been taken to this limit before. To me, it's just like this should have been a different type of beating for a Jon Moxley.
Well, but a tap is a submission. Like he walked away from the arena. He was being hung out. Yeah, but that was momentary, and that's why he tapped to escape it. Like he wasn't stretchered out. It wasn't like that type of injury. I can understand people wanting like that sort of thing, but for me, this worked because of the Jon Moxley character.
There is an ability that whenever Danielson comes back, if you are going to split him away, that is the fracturing point of here we had both of us. We tapped on the same night. I came back and was immediately on that Dynamite right after, and you went home like a coward.
Totally. Yeah,
and that's absolutely the reason to break up. So you could certainly go and bring that up. And I just think like for this Texas death match, you want to make this your most violent match. That the next time a Texas death match occurs, you're right. Like it was, I think it's going to be remembered as such. I just think like there should be. I wanted a bit more tonight in terms of just beyond just the psychological scars, also like the physical toll it took.
Yeah. I suppose like I kind of appreciate this like fresh way of selling, something like a Texas death match versus like, just sitting out. I would have been pissed off if Christian showed up tonight after being buried in a casket match. That almost kind of feels to me like it's more meant to be like a final type of thing. Whereas like the Texas death match to me felt like still like an like a competition, and it's just embarrassing to lose or significantly embarrassing to lose, especially if you're Jon Moxley.
That's how we should have ended Dynamite, just out on in a graveyard and the arm comes through.
Christian, like a zombie Christian shows up.
Zombie Christian.
No, Blue Dot shows up.
Oh my God. With a mustache. Next, so the match begins with a Dark Order against Moxley and Castagnoli, and it's just pure aggression from the BCC. Claudio misses a knee in the corner, landing on the floor. They had cut off the ring with Reynolds for a time. Then Silver gets the tag, and he's caught in a triangle. But then Silver gift wraps Moxley, and he's delivering knees. And Moxley then gets out, applies a choke, half and half suplex onto Reynolds, and then applies a Darce choke that he has now added to his repertoire, submitting Reynolds in 10 minutes and 27 seconds. But after the match ends, he then puts on a rear naked choke. Claudio is stopping Rick Knox from getting involved. Silver tries to help, and they're just beating down on the Dark Order. Bulldog choke on Reynolds. Evil Uno runs down to attack. So Yuta chop blocks Evil Uno from behind. So now it's not just Moxley snapping after the match. It's Yuta is being a coward by chop blocking him from behind. So Hangman runs down and everyone goes wild. And he decks Claudio, who pops back with a European uppercut. The whole crowd is chanting, "Let them fight." and it appears to be Hangman not done with Moxley as he has backed up his Dark Order buddies.
But you're right. Like, Hangman was physically selling more of the injuries. He had the black eye. He was coming down, running down with a limp as well. And maybe that's kind of their way of like, balancing the scale, so to speak. Have Hangman be the one end up with the victory in the record books, but Moxley, came out of this even more motivated and angry. I wasn't expecting them to continue this in any sort of fashion. I mean, that Texas Death Match felt about as final as I think of a match as you could have. This seems like it's at least going to create a bit of a faction war, or at least maybe a trios match or something on their own. And is that it? Like, is that how these two will, is this just sort of like almost an epilogue to the Hangman Moxley feud?
Yeah, like I don't think you certainly need to go beyond the trios match, but that's obviously a match that they're going to do in the next coming weeks. And you are like coming out of this show, like you see a bunch of different trios now that are in play that can also double in your tag division with some of the pairings as well. So you have created that too.
Yeah. I mean, tonight was significant because you finally had Moxley also join in on a full heel turn for the BCC, and I thought it was all really well done. The way it's been built, I think, has felt very organic and felt very natural. The BCC have always had that hard edge to them, and after losing embarrassing fashion, tapping out the Texas Death Match, I think it gave Mox great motivation to, dive deeper into the dark side of the force here with the BCC. And to me, like, it doesn't feel like there's any sort of like sudden shift in personality. Everything you can completely justify in terms of a character. So I thought this was really strong. I love the fact that he's like brought the darts choke in right now as well. It's just it's a move you could do on anybody. It's quick and it's just vicious.
Renee interviewed the Acclaimed, and they're on the road back to the tag titles, and it starts tonight in Sacramento. Parker and Menard walk in, and they love rap music too, and that the Acclaimed are sports entertainers at heart and want them to join the group. And they just laugh this off and note that we get more television time than you do. And everyone's amused by this offer by Menard and Parker. Rampage, Friday night, Sammy Guevara against Action Andretti. Konosuke Takeshita against Preston Vance. Riho versus Nyla Rose, and the Acclaimed will be in action. Next week in Winnipeg, it's Cassidy and Jarrett for the international title, the House of Black, Elite, and J.A.S. for the trios belts, and the Rebar Mitzvah for MJF.
Yes. All right.
Main event, Wardlow and Powerhouse Hobbs, Falls Count Anywhere for the TNT Championship. It starts in the back, and I don't know whose rental this was, but this car got destroyed in the process.
They must have got insurance.
I hope so. Hobbs uses the sonic ring as a weapon. Wardlow's sent into the car door. Then Hobbs just heaves this steel canister that busts the window. And then they fight on the hood of the car with Hobbs taking a back body drop onto the windshield. This is a big dude to be taking a bump onto a windshield.
Yeah. Hopefully it hurt less if you're big than if you're somebody small and taking this bump.
Hopefully no Goldberg fans that insisted that it be legit glass.
Yeah,
on the car. Always a good lesson to learn from Bill. Hobbs, after the break, they make their way into the ring, and Hobbs pops up from a spine buster, hits his own, so Wardlow pops up. The crowd just wants tables. So Hobbs hits a pair of more spine busters, and Hobbs sets up a table on the floor. Wardlow spits water in his face, places Hobbs on the table, and Wardlow proceeds to hit a swanton off the top through the table on the floor. That was a spectacular looking spot. Then he powerbombs Hobbs onto the ramp. But after delivering this powerbomb, Wardlow goes down, and he's like clutching his midsection. I don't know what he did here, but it looked like he put all of it into trying to powerbomb this dude on the ramp. So they make their way up, and we are about to see Wardlow powerbomb Hobbs off the stage when he's nailed from behind with a chair. And it is the man behind QTV, not to be confused with GTV. It's QT Marshall.
So what is QTV? I haven't been keeping up. Like, it's his version of GTV?
Yes, pretty much.
And where does this air? Dark?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
This is the reveal of QTV.
And so Taz was saying, "Oh, QT Marshall, he's a
man of his word.
He's always told Hobbs that he's got his back." And
this goes back to the Ricky Starks program. So listen, you really need a memory to put this all back together of this feud, and QT promising Hobbs that he would have his back in the Starks program. But this is, that's how they were tying it in. Great.
So like some one-off like backstage interaction where QT mentioned this is sure, whatever. Like all they have to do is play the footage and sure, they need a reason, and okay, fine.
They had to cut that promo, and then they had to seal the result months in advance. So they had to do this on the state. So he kicks him low, nails Wardlow with another chair shot, and then they lift up Wardlow and dump him off the stage onto the world's most dangerous crash pad. And the referee counts to 10. Hobbs is the winner, new TNT champion, and QT delivered on his promise to Hobbs. Man of his word.
Yes, we were all wondering. Hey, first of all, the match. You know, we had all kind of said like these two needed this match to be spectacular, so that people would be talking about it, and I thought they did a great job. The idea to do it as almost like a big, backstage kaiju fight with two guys that are as big as they are falling through cars, and guys doing like a Wardlow doing a senton. I thought it was great. I thought they did a really great job with a match that we don't often see in AEW. The finish, I think, is going to sour a lot of people. For one thing, QT Marshall is somebody who is firmly kind of seen as a jobber. And to pair him, to inject him with like Hobbs, like can be perceived as a step down. Although I'm kind of willing to see what sort of dynamic that they have. I also don't know if like having him play such a big part in Hobbs winning helped the credibility of a guy that's kind of just starting back up like a Hobbs as well. What did you think, John?
I wasn't crazy about the ending of it. It was, I think for both, it was, for me, it did somewhat, like here you have Hobbs that is going to be super over for this a pretty hot Sacramento crowd. I thought for that reason, they spent way too much time in the back. I thought you could have, fed off that crowd a lot.
A lot of it was the commercial, though. They had to get through the commercial, and then by the time they came back from commercial was when they
got in. But it was a fair amount. And once they got it, like the swanton off the table, like that was just a spectacular spot. A lot of the stuff like they did, given the size of these two, like I don't think it was a disappointing match by any stretch. But yeah, certainly the ending. I don't mind Hobbs winning the title. In fact, it was a chance to, like, the short title reign is whatever. But yeah, it is the QT involvement that is going to be a bit of a damper for some. And ultimately, where is Wardlow after this? Like, this is someone, he's not this red hot character that can just lose willy-nilly and he's going to be fine. He's still going to be over. He's still a question mark to me, and he's cooled off significantly. And to lose here, if this just means a program with QT or continuing with Hobbs, like we'll see where this goes, but it's hardly like Wardlow is in this secure spot either.
Yeah. I almost though feel like it's better to, put all your chips into Hobbs at this point than Wardlow. And you wonder if like this was always the plan. If they saw Hobbs' reaction last week and maybe made this decision, I'm not really sure. But I'm excited about this for Hobbs. I question the idea of pairing a manager with him because I think the guy has shown that he could talk for himself. And having a manager, as we've seen in these sort of AEW pairings, just kind of limits the amount of promos that they could cut. Especially, somebody who has such a, diminished status as a QT Marshall. So, but I'm willing to at least, wait to see what their promo sounds like, what sort of dynamic they have. I also have a lot of concerns about where Wardlow goes from this.
Yeah, because it's like it's very apparent like where he went from Double or Nothing to throughout the rest of the year. It was like they lost a lot of steam with him, and and what this ultimately does. But yeah, that was the show. That was, to me, the highlight of the show was the All Atlantic. International title match. What could we call it tonight? I guess it's still an All Atlantic Championship match tonight.
Next week is the final defense, isn't it?
That's right. And then the new is it a new lineage as well? Does it continue from the All Atlantic lineage? What's happening here? Is this like when the IWGP title changed?
I'm sure Tony Khan has a an explanation for that. I don't know. We have a super chat here from John Taylor. Thank you very much, John Taylor, for sending $20. And why $20? I'm sending Post Wrestling the $20 I saved by using NordVPN.com to travel, in quotation marks, to Mexico to watch AEW Revolution. So clearly plenty of people already discovering the benefits of NordVPN. NordVPN.com/Post Wrestling, everybody. Try it out. 30 days.
Check it out. All right, let's get into some feedback before we wind things down. Johnny writes, strange, usually for me at least, AEW starts off strong in the first hour, weaker the second, but I love that second hour this week and actually got me to stick to the episode. Glad the All-Atlantic title is being changed to the International title. Like seeing BCC solidifying his heels. I wonder how the main event would have turned out if Wardlow didn't have his gear stolen. I usually don't like short title reigns like that, but I love putting the belt on Powerhouse. All right, so there you have it.
Yeah, I guess like I don't necessarily love them either, but because it feels like they don't do them so often, like this one felt like a positive, and because I think I'm personally more excited about a Hobbs reign than I am a Wardlow reign at this point. That I enjoyed the title change as well. Let's go to Brian from New Jersey, who says best episode in weeks thanks to some good formatting and focus on new directions. Likely helps in coming out of a pay-per-view and having a clean slate for things. Good wrestling as usual, bookended by 2 good title matches and a reprieve from Battle Royals. Fantastic promos from Bryan Danielson and FTR.
Steve, Ruby turning heel sucks. It comes off as so unnatural. She always had crowd support. She came in as the disgruntled WWE superstar that was happy to have left, so joining this outsider group doesn't fit. I would say even if that is your read of the character, it's yes, she did come in with that attitude, and yet it was the audience that rejected her in several key moments that she brought up as well. Like this was not something that was her plot from day one. This was something that was a gradual turn for her that culminated in the loss on Sunday. At the same time, she's finally getting TV time, so who knows? Found out that MJF shares a birthday with my grandson, who turns 4 next Wednesday. Not to mention Max is only a year younger than my oldest son. Excited for Winnipeg Dynamite. There you have it.
Mm-hmm. I chuckled here just because Seren said, if you want to know if the All-Atlantic lineage continues, you have to watch Shazam! Fury of the Gods.
So, they'll let you know in the third act.
Yeah. Let's go to Cody from Maine, who says, while not a home run, all-timer Dynamite that a lot of people were hoping for following Sunday's event, I still found this to be an entertaining 2 hours. Nearly every match from Revolution saw follow-up in some shape or form, Jack Perry and Christian being the lone exception. And they certainly went out of the way to establish new directions moving forward, especially with the heels on the roster. Standing out in particular are the 2 polarizing heels who began and ended the night, Jeff Jarrett and QT Marshall. I understand the negative opinions some have of them, but at the end of the day, they consistently generate the negative reaction that they're looking for. Perhaps it's a fine line between good heat and go away heat. Thanks as always for the show.
Jordan from the Bronx, this week's episode was very strong in-ring as well as on promos. Cassidy is performing at a ridiculous clip. The BCC full heel turn is going to be a lot of fun, and the booking of the Triple Threat Trios match is madness. Ruby's promo started with the eye-rolling you people trope, but unlike others, she had actual proof to back her gripes. I remember being in the crowd at Grand Slam, confused why the crowd was booing her as well. Danielson and MJF were outstanding promos as well. Hobbs and Wardlow felt like a Godzilla giant monster battle. The QT run-in took me out of it, though. I liked Hobbs being by himself as the big bad wolf. I vaguely remember a very loose connection with QT Marshall months ago, but that wasn't enough for me to truly like the end of the match. I love Hobbs winning, just not how it happened. A great show overall, and Winnipeg next week looks like it's going to be fun.
If there's like, if other people share that sort of, feeling from Jordan and myself, I think they should just have Hobbs beat the shit out of QT next week and just go off on his own, I really do think he's shown like enough capacity as a promo to be able to handle it, but we'll see where they go. Let's go to Sal from California, who says, I was at the show live tonight. It was my first time taking my kids to a wrestling show, and it was a blast watching my son react to everything. My favorite match of the night was actually from Dark Elevation. Jack Cartwheel wrestled Brian Cage, and Cartwheel stole the show. The arena was buzzing for a lot of the high-flying moves he did. I recommend anyone check out the match if you have the time.
Jack Cartwheel was on the dark tapings that aired on Tuesday. Had a great match with Konosuke Takeshita as well. So very curious if he is he's obviously on their radar, and sounds like another great performance this week.
FTR promo was another highlight for me. I'm happy to see them back and hope we get a lengthy tag title run for FTR. The crowd was hot for Will Hobbs all night, and everyone seemed pretty surprised when QT ran out to help. After Dynamite went off the air, Hobbs grabbed the mic and turned heel on Sacramento, saying he couldn't wait to leave for Oakland.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. Overall, it was a fun show live. We ducked up before Rampage so I could get the kids to bed early.
All right. Well, there you have it. Always great to get a live feedback. And there you have it, a match to maybe check out with Jack Cartwheel and Brian Cage. But that's going to bring an end to the show. So thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. Want to make note that up on the site right now, Andrew Thompson just posting a story that, according to Tokyo Sports, Sarai is going to be departing WWE after her contract expires. And then she'll be heading back to Japan to resume her in-ring career, with her first match back in Japan scheduled for May 16th at an event titled Saraiism at Shinjuku Face in Tokyo. So there you have it. Not the most memorable WWE run for Sarai.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate. Doesn't always work out. And there might be other reasons when somebody has to leave their home country and live in a completely different foreign country. Also, Mark Briscoe announced that there will be a reach for the Skye ladder match to crown the new ROH World Tag Team Champions at Supercard of Honor in LA. Lucha Brothers are the first team announced.
Okay. Yes, and episode 2 of Ring of Honor is airing Thursday. It's another marathon slate of matches. I think it's like 9 matches, including 3 title matches. They're doing Samoa Joe and Tony Deppen, Athena against Willow Nightingale, and then Wheeler Yuta is defending the Pure Championship on the show. Eddie Kingston has a match, so we'll try and catch some of that over the next day or so. But that's going to be it for us. Again, Thursday, we will have our latest Drive to Survive episode at postwrestlingcafe.com, going through episodes 4, 5, and 6 from the latest season, and then Friday night live minutes after Rampage with Rewind to SmackDown. So that is it for us. Thanks to everyone for joining us on Rewind to Dynamite.